welcome to the show.
Scott, thanks so much for having me on.
Now, you have a story that a lot of my listeners share, that of having to completely switch careers. Would you talk about your career transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story starts with a bit of a tragedy. My wife of 10 years, around 6 years ago, decided that she was done with the relationship. And when she did, that wasn't just kind of tragic on the emotional level, but it was also tragic on the financial level because I lost over half of my income when she left. And it made me a single dad with 3 little girls to support. And so I had to figure out something fairly quickly to be able to bolster my income. I was a musician for around 13 years, actually worked at a church. I led a music department there. And so, of course, with any nonprofit type of organization comes nonprofit pay. And so I, wasn't interested in leaving the church or leaving my full-time position, but needed a way to kind of help out financially. So on the suggestion of a friend, I started looking into web development. And turns out I actually ended up just loving it. And so poured myself into online courses, trying to find anything I could to learn this new skill. And about 6 months after just a deep dive into learning whatever I absolutely could, I started telling people I was a web designer and offering to help them build their own website. And so thankfully I had some friends and family who gave me a shot, and that just kind of snowballed into a full-time career. It started as a side hustle. Within 18 months of starting the side hustle, I doubled the income of my full-time job as a music director. And then about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, I decided to switch careers and kind of flip the script. So I ended up going full-time into web design, and then I still do music in my free time. So I've absolutely loved the process. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but it's been a great journey.
Now, so you don't have a big tech background. So was it difficult to learn the web designing, or what programs do you use to create?
Yeah, I had a little bit of the design background, being a musician, being in a band, being a part of a nonprofit. If you're going to create any type of marketing materials, or if we needed an album cover or a shirt design, like there was no money to just hire out for that stuff. And so I was the one that would always raise my hand and say, okay, I'll figure out Photoshop, or I'll figure out Adobe Illustrator and see what I can come up with. So I had a little bit of the background. It was very rudimentary, but that helped me going into learning web development. So I didn't have really any background in web development. Started with some free courses on Code Academy, and this was 6 years ago. So Code Academy at the time was 100% free. Now they've got some paid courses, they've got paid options, but there are still a lot of free courses there. And even the courses that I took are still free. So so I did that. I took a community college class, and more than anything, I just started building websites on my own for fun in my free time, seeing if I could do something. I'd see a site and I'd say, oh, that's really cool. Like, and I wonder if I can recreate that. And it was doing that more than anything else that helped me to really figure out the ins and outs of web development. And so my encouragement is always, it doesn't matter what kind of background you have. If you have an interest in this thing and a desire to learn web development, it is 100% doable, with or without, professional education or the traditional route of going through university or what have you. Like, I know so many people who are much farther along in their career. They know much more about web development than I do, and they never sat through a proper class on web development in any sense of the any type of traditional sense of the term. So yeah, so that's a bit of my background, and it's been fun. It was definitely probably a harder route to go, but as is the nature of needing to be able to be available to my kids, I couldn't go to a full-time university.
So do you get contracts for doing web design through a main company?
Yeah, so it started out with friends and family, like I mentioned, and from there it just kind of snowballed. I ended up building websites for pretty much everybody I knew, and everybody that I knew that needed one, and probably a few that were just being nice to me and didn't really need one, but were trying to cut me a break. And so after that, I had to figure out how to find business from people that weren't necessarily in my immediate network. So I turned to a platform called Upwork, and a lot of people are probably familiar with that and have experience with it on one level or another. But Upwork was actually a great experience for me. And within about 6 months or so, I started landing some really great projects that were high value projects, and still get them to this day, and have gotten different web design clients from upwards of $10,000 for a project. So it definitely is a great platform to find some good web design projects. And there are a lot of people out there on Upwork who will do the same job as you do for a percentage of the cost that you would charge, a fraction. But there are people on there who are putting projects that are looking for high value freelancers that are willing to pay more to get higher quality. And so I found that to be true for myself, and have helped people figure out how to find those clients and how to get those projects as well.
So it's kind of like a higher end version of Fiverr.
Yeah, Upwork definitely is probably the highest end as far as they have the biggest net for people who can be on the platform. There are some platforms like Toptal, when it comes to design and development, that are much more closed to the general population. Like, you've got to go through a really long process of applying and then doing interviewing. So it's like you're interviewing for a job to be a part of this freelance pool, and they only take like 5% of all the people that apply to be on there. So then there's Upwork, which there's still a lot of high paying clients on there, still a lot of great talent. And then you kind of go down the list. There's Freelancer, which they've got a lot of projects, but typically those projects are much lower paying. And then there's Fiverr, which is also much lower paying. And I think that's due to the fact that that's kind of how they market themselves. They said, give me $5 and I'll create you a logo. And so people aren't necessarily going to that platform to look for high value projects. Now, I have known plenty of people who have made six figures on Fiverr, but it really is a matter of high volume and low pay. And so if you can push out a lot of things really efficiently and quickly, then Fiverr is a good platform for you, and you'll be able to make a lot of money. But if you're someone who, like me, I'd like to take time with projects. I like to make sure that what I'm giving my client is the highest value as possible. And so that's more than just a weekend project. That a lot of the times will take multiple months.
And your website looks awesome, selfmadewebdesigner.com. What do you say to someone like me who has I use Squarespace? Would I have the skills doing that to do something bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of growth from when I started, 6 years ago, with what is available to help someone build websites. And I know people who are web designers that have their own company. They make six figures, multiple six figures, and they use what's called WYSIWYG website builders. And Squarespace is a WYSIWYG, and that stands for what you see is what you get. You put an image in the Squarespace editor, and that's what you see on the website. And so I actually work for a company as a UX web designer that we've got a drag and drop website builder that we market specifically to photographers and other creatives. And it's truly drag and drop, drag and drop. You can move things around. You can put things all over the place. And so there's a lot of tools that you don't really need to know a ton of development to be a web designer and have a freelance web design business. All that being said, it does take work. It does take looking into aspects of design and conversion. It takes, a lot of practice when it comes to building things. It's just like any artist, the first few works that they do are bad, but that's fine. It's all a part of the process. You do a lot of bad work and eventually you start doing stuff that looks fairly decent. And then you start getting into a category of being proficient at what you do.
Great. Let's switch gears a bit here to productivity. Now, what would you say are the apps, software, technology that you rely on most for your personal productivity?
Yeah, for sure. I have a few. The main one I use is Toggle, and I track my time pretty religiously to see how efficient I am at what I'm doing. And also it can help me to know, all right, this type of task is taking me too great of amount of time to do it. So I either need to get more efficient at being able to do that task, or I need to get it off my plate somehow, or some other version of that. And it's really interesting, because I talk to a lot of people who don't feel like they have the time to learn a new skill or do a side hustle or whatever. And I was able to do all this as a single dad when I really had less time than I'd ever had before. And, I've found that the less time that I have to do something, the more I'm able to get things done quicker and more efficiently. And so through Toggle, I've been able to see, okay, if I've got an 8-hour workday, I'm actually only spending 5 to 6 hours at my computer, like working away. The rest of that is taking a break or having a conversation with somebody or going and checking on something in the house, or my kids needing help with their school because everybody's going to school from my home right now rather than going back to their campuses. So it's really pretty interesting. So that's one. Another one is more of a methodology than an app, and it's called the 12-week year. And have absolutely loved learning about that and their system. It's basically, the idea is rather than making yearly goals, you make goals for a quarter at a time. And then they have a system of evaluation each week to say, okay, here's what I was trying to get done, and here's what I actually got done. And so then you grade yourself for that week, and you have a partner that you go through the grade that you got. So there's that form of accountability when it comes to the goals that you're actually trying to meet. Another couple cool things that I found that have been really good to getting into like deep work and that focus, like Cal Newport talks about in his book. There's a site called caveday.org. And that essentially is just a big group of people who are trying to achieve that deep work or that flow state. And so you've got somebody who leads the group and kind of takes everybody through some stretching and breathing exercises to kind of clear your mind. And then for a time that the leader specifies that nobody else really knows, everybody just puts their heads down and starts working on a single task that they've stated at the beginning of the session. And so they put on some white noise in the background. And then at the end of the session, you hear a bell and it's over, you take a break, and then you keep doing that as long as you want to try to reach that flow state. Another one is called Focus Mate, and that's the same idea, but it's more of a one-on-one. And so I think it's focusmate.org or .com. I'm not 100% sure, but you essentially sign up to do focused work with a partner, and you chat for a little bit. Here's what I'm working on. Great. And then they tell you, okay, here's what I'm working on. And then it's just like a Zoom call. You just work while you're on the video conference with them. And as silly as that seems, that little bit of accountability when you're working away and you decide, okay, I want to be distracted for a second, and you look up and you see somebody who's still working, like that kind of says, okay, they're still working, so I'm going to keep working and I'm not going to get myself distracted. So those two tools have been really fun, and a way to build a relationship with other people out there in a time when we're not really able to meet others in person.
All right, we'll have to check those out. What would you say is your most valuable tip for work-life balance or work-life integration? You've got kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing that I have found when it comes to work-life balance, and this is going to be, a little philosophical more than anything else. It's not very practical, but it's to have as much self-compassion as you possibly can.
Hmm.
Because right now, nobody's doing a great job, right? Like most of the people that I have talked to, they're not crushing the work-life balance because everything has become intermixed. I'm working, and my daughter, who's in the 5th grade, is literally right outside my door. And she pops in and says, I need you to print something off for me. Or my 2nd grade daughter comes down and she's been kicked off of her Google meeting and needs to figure out how to be let back in. And so everything is all just kind of running together and meshing. And so I think more than ever, like, we have to have a level of compassion for ourselves and knowing, like, we're not going to be super productive right now. And the funny thing is the more compassionate you are with yourself, the more you're able to just jump right back in when you have a moment. There's a great book by Nir Eyal called Indistractable. And he talks about a lot of studies that they've done with self-compassion. And they've even found that people who have more self-compassion are able to get out of addictions with, like, alcoholism and drugs because of that one key component. So, the cycle is you get distracted, you feel bad about it. And so rather than face the music and just get back into the work, you avoid it. And so you distract yourself even more.
Right.
And so it just keeps going down the cycle of feeling bad and not getting any work done. So if you were to stop that cycle with, like, hey, that's okay, we're all human, I'm going to get back to it, then you're able to stay focused in a better way than if you were just to be down on yourself the whole time.
From your blog posts, I can tell that you're a reader. When do you have time to read, and what are some of your recommendations in terms of self-development?
Yeah, I definitely love to read. And when I say read, I mean listen. I don't do a ton of actual reading. I have a ton of books on Audible and get one a month, but more times than not, I'm doing hey, if you sign up for 3 credits, you'll get a discount. So I do that a ton. I tend to listen to books while I'm doing work that doesn't require a deep amount of mental effort. So any type of admin work that I'm doing, any type of email, anything that doesn't require me to think of words. And so, like, anytime I'm doing copy, or creating content, like, I can't really listen to even music or a book, right? Because that takes a certain part of my brain that if I've got words going on in the background, like, I'm just going to be fighting myself the whole time. So there are certain things I can do in design. Like if I have a design figured out of the direction I'm going to go in, and I just need to put it practically into, like, a Photoshop element or whatever, then I can listen to a book in the background. I also listen anytime I've got, a spare minute, or I'm doing something around the house that doesn't require deep thought. So doing dishes, working out, going for a jog, going for a walk with my newborn, and just trying to calm him down a little bit. I'll plug in my headphones and I'll just listen. So that's really been the only way that I've been able to figure out how to read amidst having so many other responsibilities.
Right. What's a hobby you enjoy that most people let me start that again. What's a hobby you enjoy that most people may be surprised about?
Yeah, oddly enough, I watch a lot of movies.
Hmm.
And with as much as I'm able to get done, I kind of feel bad for being so up to date on movies and television series. But that's one of the things where I find the most amount of rest and the best amount of ability to kind of disconnect. My brain is going so quickly all day long, and TV is like, it just makes me feel numb and make me not think about anything. And as much as like people are like, don't watch TV because it numbs your brain or whatever, it makes you stupider. Like, I need that moment in my day where my brain just absolutely turns off and I'm not thinking about what I need to do or accomplish. So, and there have been seasons where I'm better and worse about making sure that I'm putting boundaries around how much I'm actually consuming. But suffice it to say, that's a guilty pleasure of mine and a hobby that I enjoy.
What are some of your favorite movies?
Well, I just got finished watching a TV series and I'm way behind on this, but I finished up on Breaking Bad. And so that took me a decent amount of time. So that was a lot of fun. I've not really watched a ton of movies in the season because there's not been a lot that have come out, but I like more action movies. I like movies that are a little bit more inspiring. I'm excited about Tenet, Christopher Nolan's movie coming out. Really hope to see that one soon. I'm excited about A Quiet Place 2 coming out. So, but all of these movies that I've really look forward to seeing keep getting pushed back. So, oh well, but eventually things will go back to normal.
Yeah. I guess I could see the connection between a musician like in A Quiet Place with that real hyper focus on sound and, in silence,
Yeah, it's a great concept. And honestly, I don't really love scary movies, but a friend of mine who kind of knows me well and the types of things I like, he was like, no, you have to watch this. And it's probably one of my all-time top 10 movies that I've watched.
Now, I know you were mentioning about not using music a lot when you're doing stuff that you got to think about or that you don't want spoken word that would distract you. I wonder if it's a musician thing too, because I can't listen. I love Frank Zappa, but I could never listen to it while I'm trying to think about something else because you always hear people going, oh yeah, they have their headphones on and they're blaring music while they're doing studying and homework. I can't imagine doing that. Maybe, do you think it's maybe a musician thing that our brains are hooked into focusing in on those things?
Yeah, actually, and this is going to show you how long I've kind of been interested in working efficiently and being productive. I did a research study when I was in junior high on the effects of focus and listening to music.
Hmm.
And so my thesis was, or my thought was, that the more classical music you play, the more you're able to pay attention and get work done more efficiently. And the more like hard rock music you play, the less you're able to get work done efficiently. And what I found was that none of that was true. And, I'm a seventh grader, so these are not like legitimate research studies, so it could have been totally skewed and not any good at all. But what I found was that people who knew the songs that they were listening to were more distracted by the lyrics that they were hearing or wanting to sing along or wanting to kind of be engaged. So I don't think that it's necessarily music in itself. I think it's music that you can identify with or you connect with somehow. So if you know the music or you've heard it, like it's going to kind of pull your attention away. But if you've got some ambient music in the background that is really nondescript, right? Like there's no distinguishable chord changes. There's no melody that is catchy that's kind of pulling you and taking your attention away. Like that will help you to stay focused. So I found that for me, being a musician, that's pretty tough to come by because I'm always listening for melodies. I'm always listening. If I hear a good line on whatever instrument, I'm like, oh, that was a cool line. And it takes me out of that state. So when I'm really trying to focus, I have to do white noise. And so there's an app on my phone that I use that actually I love airplane noise. Just because I found that when I have a long flight on the airplane, I'm able to actually focus more. And I'm looking up the app right now, but there's tons of them out there where it's like anything that you pick to kind of help you will, really help you focus in that regard. So
Yeah, I found that only specific albums really make it conducive for me to study or get work done. There's an album Pulse by Pink Floyd. The original Blade Runner soundtrack by Vangelis is one that is, like you say, it's very kind of mood atmospheric and nothing, no hard edges, nothing that's going to take your attention away. I've also found that artists that I don't really like that good seem to help that. Like, I'm not a big fan of U2, and for some reason I can listen to them and get, 2 hours of work done listening to a couple of albums, and I don't really enjoy it, but it really helps me think. So I like it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's weird, how different people will respond differently to different types of music. And so you've got to kind of figure out for yourself what works.
Right. For someone, maybe listening to Metallica at full volume would be calming for them and restful and reassuring. Maybe a teenager would hear, Mozart symphony and that would be like nails on the chalkboard.
Yeah, right.
So it's
Absolutely.
subjective. Well, I've got one final question for you, Chris. This has been a great pleasure. What's one powerful action step that our listeners can take to help them live a joyful, productive, and fulfilling life?
Yeah, I think that the main thing, and this is how I approach everything, is, whatever idea you've been sitting on, whatever thing that you've been like considering, just go for it. And if it fails, it fails. And I think so many people, and I talk to so many people from the Self-Made Web Designer website, that what's holding them back is the fear of failure. And I tend to go, I'm going to try this thing, and if it fails, then that's egg on my face, and I'll learn from it nonetheless. So the whole point is just to try something and keep going until you find the results that you were looking for, or until you decide this isn't what I wanted after all. But you can't be afraid of that.
Well, Chris, you've given us a lot of things to think about and a lot of ways to help our productivity. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you here at the All the Hats We Wear podcast. This show will teach you the time management skills you need to be joyful, productive, and fulfilled in all areas of life. I believe if we want a fulfilling life, we must identify all the hats we wear, then turn each role into a beautiful work of art. This is episode 32, and I'm your host, life coach, and productivity expert, Scott Snow. Today we have a very talented and creative guest named Chris Misterek. Chris is a self-taught UX web designer that works for a tech startup in Arizona, but he didn't start there. For 13 years, he was basically a full-time musician. While he loved his full-time job, it became clear that he would need to make more money to support his 3 daughters as a single dad. That's when he turned to web design. He started learning everything he could about 5 years ago and then began freelancing in his free time shortly after. That led him to where he is today. Now, instead of freelancing in his spare time, he teaches other people how to take the same path he did at selfmadewebdesigner.com and with his podcast with the same name. He loves helping people finding breakthroughs in their lives through the gig economy and has devoted himself to helping others find the life change he has through web design. You're meant to do great things. If you want to be an innovator and visionary, you have to manage your busy life like one. The All the Hats We Wear planner is the planner for the future. I want to give you a free month of the planner to try out for yourself. Nothing will slip through the cracks anymore. When you use the All the Hats We Wear planner, you'll have everything you need at your fingertips. All of your goals, a vision statement, a list of daily habits, and a checklist to track your progress. Key information for the small and large projects on your plate. Daily sheets to clarify your top outcomes for each day, a week at a glance section to plan for the coming weeks, and much more. The All the Hats We Wear planner will be your roadmap to a more joyful, productive, and fulfilling life. To claim your free month so you can see for yourself how it will streamline your busy life, visit allthehatswewear.com.